The first time Adam opened his eyes, he saw the rivers gleaming under a newborn sun. The first time Lilith opened hers, she saw the same light, the same sky, and the man standing beside her, breathing the same sacred air. They rose together from the red dust, molded by the same hand, filled with the same breath. Not one before the other, not one from the other. In the beginning, they were equals. The garden stretched out before them, lush and endless. Trees heavy with fruit bowed low to greet them. Rivers hummed ancient songs beneath bridges of flowering vines. The animals watched them with wide, wondering eyes. For a time, there was peace. Adam moved through Eden, naming the creatures, claiming the world with each word spoken. Lilith walked beside him, silent at first, her dark hair brushing her shoulders, her eyes absorbing everything, the taste of the air, the way the earth pulsed under her feet, the way Adam's voice filled the spaces between the trees. But something deep inside her stirred, a restless current rising like a hidden tide. When Adam reached out to guide her hand, she pulled it back. When Adam spoke of ruling the earth, she listened, but a shadow crossed her face. When Adam laid down to rest beneath the trees, he expected Lilith to lie at his feet. Instead, she stood tall, staring at the stars. In the heart of paradise, a question was born, not from hatred, not from rebellion for rebellion's sake, but from a fierce and holy spark that refused to be dimmed. Why must I serve him? Were we not made the same, from the same earth, under the same sky? If I kneel, does it not betray the very breath that gave me life? Lilith turned from Adam that night, her footprints pressing deeper into the soil of Eden. Above her, the heavens watched in silence. Around her, the garden held its breath. Something unseen shifted. Creation had been made whole. But now, something inside it had begun to tear, and the wound would echo far beyond Eden's gates. It didn't happen all at once. At first, Adam simply assumed she would follow where he led, tend what he named, bend when he decided. He spoke easily, the way a king speaks to his subjects without thinking. Lilith listened. She obeyed, until she didn't. One afternoon, as golden light pooled at the edges of the garden, Adam commanded her to gather fruit from the lower trees while he explored the upper fields. His voice was firm, expectant, but Lilith stood still. Her hands did not move to obey. Her head did not bow. Her eyes met his, and for the first time, Adam felt the jolt of resistance. "I will not serve you," she said, her voice as steady as the river that cut through Eden. "We were made equal, from the same earth. I will not lie beneath you. I will not walk behind you." Adam's face darkened, confusion twisting into anger. He had never been disobeyed, not by the animals, not by the earth, not by anything under heaven. He stepped closer, towering over her, expecting submission to come swiftly now. But Lilith did not flinch. "You were made for me," Adam said sharply. "No," Lilith answered, the fire in her chest burning hotter. "We were made for each other." The trees shivered in the breathless silence that followed. The ground itself seemed to listen. Adam's pride swelled. He demanded, he commanded, he insisted that she submit, that she know her place beneath him. But Lilith refused, not out of cruelty, not out of vanity, but because something deep within her soul recoiled at the thought of domination. The breath that gave her life was too holy to be shackled. And in that defined moment, the first rift cracked open between man and woman, between power and freedom, between control and dignity. It wasn't anger that filled Lilith's heart. It was sorrow. She had not come to rule Adam. She had not come to be ruled. She had come to walk beside him, as a partner, as a mirror, as an equal reflection of the divine breath they both carried. But now, that dream was withering, and the fire that had been a gift began to forge something new inside her, something that would not be caged, even in paradise. Lilith turned her back to Adam, not in hatred, but in heartbreak. And for the first time in Eden, love did not bind. It broke. Lilith wandered through the wild edges of Eden, where the gardens grew untamed and the rivers ran fierce and free. She could feel the weight of Adam's anger pressing at her back, but she did not turn around. She walked until the carefully ordered world he ruled gave way to raw creation, the places where the trees still stretched wild toward the heavens, and the winds still sang songs no man had yet named. And there, beneath the vast unbroken sky, Lilith lifted her face to the heavens and cried out, not in rage, but in fierce, aching truth, "O Creator, you formed me from the same dust as him. You breathed into me the same breath. You crowned me with life, not chains. Why then should I bow before one who's not greater than I? Why should I lie beneath him when we were born side by side?" Her voice carried on the wind, across the rivers and mountains of the untouched earth. She was not pleading. She was not begging. She was claiming what she believed was already hers: dignity, freedom, the right to stand, not kneel. The heavens held their silence. No thunder answered. No voice boomed from the clouds. Only the stars blinked down at her, silent witnesses to the first act of defiance written into the story of creation. But Lilith would not relent. She did what no creature before her had dared. She spoke the ineffable name of God, the holy name forbidden to mortal tongues. In doing so, she unleashed a power not even the angels fully understood. It was not a curse. It was a claim. "If I am made by your hand," she whispered, her voice steady despite the shaking ground, "then let me walk in your freedom, not in Adam's shadow." The earth trembled gently beneath her bare feet. Somewhere deep within the garden, beasts lifted their heads, sensing the ripples of something eternal changing course. Lilith had not only defied Adam, she had challenged the very order of paradise, and the price of that prayer was about to be written across the stones of Eden. She would not stay. She could not stay. Not as Adam's subject, not as something lesser than what she was created to be. And so, without fear, without regret, Lilith turned her back, not just on Adam, but on Eden itself. The first exile had begun, and the world would never be the same. The garden wept as Lilith fled. Behind her, Eden's perfect rivers twisted in confusion. The trees that once leaned lovingly toward her now shuddered in the heavy silence. Flowers closed their petals as if mourning. The sun, high and golden, seemed to dim as she ran. Lilith did not look back. Each step she took carved a scar across the earth, a wound not seen by human eyes, but felt by all creation, a memory of freedom choosing exile, a song of dignity choosing loneliness. The breath of God still pulsed inside her chest, but the world she had known, the world where that breath was meant to dance beside Adam's, had already begun to seal its gates behind her. Above, from the heights of unseen realms, the angels watched. They did not rejoice. They did not sing. They were silent, their wings folded in sorrow. 3 of them were sent after her, messengers of mercy, agents of the Creator's will. Their robes shimmered like the edge of dawn. Their faces were not cruel, but they bore the weight of the impossible. They found her at the edge of the wilderness, where the lush green of Eden crumbled into wasteland and dust. They spoke with voices that seemed to shake the air itself. Lilith, return. Submit, and you may yet stay within the blessing of Eden. Return to Adam, and the gates shall not close behind you. Lilith turned to them, her face streaked with the sweat and dust of her flight. Her heart ached, not with fear, but with a sorrow so vast it seemed to stretch beyond the horizon. She heard the offer. She heard the promise of comfort, of safety. But she knew, if she returned, it would not be as an equal. It would not be as one who stood tall beside Adam. It would be as something broken, something chained, and she would not betray the fire that burned in her bones. I will not go back, Lilith said, her voice low, steady, final. The angels bowed their heads. They did not force her. They could not. The laws written into creation itself respected the terrible majesty of free will. And so, with sorrow in their eyes, they turned and left her standing alone at the edge of the world she once called home. Above her, the sky darkened. Before her stretched barren lands without end. Lilith walked forward, into exile, into wilderness, into legend. The first woman who chose freedom over paradise, knowing the cost would be exile, loneliness, and the transformation of her name from a song of creation to a whispered curse. But Lilith did not tremble. She did not weep. The world had rejected her, but her soul remained her own. And somewhere, deep beyond the veil of human understanding, history shuddered, because the story of mankind had just been changed forever. Eden grew quiet after Lilith's footsteps faded into the wilderness. The animals no longer danced freely across the meadows. The rivers no longer laughed against the stones. Even the wind seemed to mourn. And Adam sat alone beneath the tree of life, his head bowed, his hands gripping the earth from which he had been made. For the first time, loneliness touched him, not as a passing shadow, but as a weight that pressed into his very bones. God saw the Creator, who had breathed life into dust, who had shaped stars and spun galaxies into being, looked upon Adam and knew it was not good for man to be alone. But this time, creation would not begin from dust, not from the shared earth, not from the same ground that had once given birth to two equals. Number this time, Adam himself would be the source. While Adam slept in a heavy, dreamless slumber, God reached into his side, not into his heart, not into his mind, but into his rib, close to his core, yet apart from his command. And from that rib, God shaped a new being, softer, gentler, woven not from the wild freedom of the soil, but from the very flesh of the man. When Adam awoke, he beheld her. Evening, bone of his bone, flesh of his flesh. She was beautiful beyond words, radiant with innocence, clothed only in the golden breath of God. And Adam loved her instantly, not as an equal born beside him, but as something drawn from him, belonging to him. Eve smiled up at him, eyes wide with wonder, unburdened by the questions that had once burned in Lilith's gaze. There was no rebellion in her, no defiance, only the easy trust of a soul untouched by exile. For a moment, Eden seemed whole again, but beneath the singing trees and flowing rivers, the ground still remembered. The earth still bore the silent memory of the one who had refused to bow. And though Eve and Adam would walk the paths of the garden together, laughing, loving, naming every living thing, the story of humanity had already been marked by a choice made in fire. Submission over freedom, comfort over courage, order over equality. Creation had been amended, but it had not been healed. And somewhere beyond the borders of Eden, Lilith wandered the desolate lands, alone but unbroken, carrying with her the memory of what could have been, and the haunting prophecy of what was still yet to come. Beyond Eden's gates, Lilith wandered. The world outside paradise was raw, wild, and merciless. The rivers ran colder, the nights stretched longer, the winds carried no songs, only the hollow sound of emptiness. But Lilith did not crumble. She built herself anew from the dust of exile, clothed herself in the fierce dignity of survival. Alone in the barren lands, she became something Eden had never known, a being who chose her own path, even when it led through darkness. But the world that remained inside the garden did not forget her. Adam spoke of her, first in anger, then in warning. Stories of the woman who refused spread like fire among the generations. Her name became dangerous, blamed for the unknown, blamed for the uncontrollable. When infants died in their sleep, they said it was Lilith's doing. When a man dreamed of a woman who drained him of his strength, they whispered it was Lilith visiting him in the night. When fear crept into homes after sunset, it carried her name on its breath. The wild woman became the night spirit, the mother of demons, the child stealer, the dark temptress. Her story, once a cry for equality, was twisted into a warning against rebellion. The same fire that once fueled her prayer now burned in the tells meant to terrify. The same strength that carried her into exile now fed the myths of a monster. Lilith became a mirror, reflecting not her own darkness, but humanity's fear of what they could not control. She was cursed, yes, but not by God, by mankind, by the ones who could not bear to remember that once, long ago, a woman stood tall, refused to kneel, and paid the price for her freedom. And as the ages turned, her name sank deeper into folklore, into nightmares, into whispered prayers meant to ward her away. Yet Lilith herself remained, beyond the reach of their curses, beyond the pages of their rewritten histories, unchained, unforgotten, and undefeated, waiting, watching, and carrying still the ember of a choice that had shaped creation itself.